Okay, well, we'll just trust that it is. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide.
And space bar.
Space bar. Okay, so we have a little cartoon about a couple of stars. And I like to think that we as amateur astronomers really know who the real stars are. And it's not necessarily the movie stars or the YouTube stars, it's the stars in the heavens. Okay?
Right.
So I'll go to the next one. I just hit the, yeah, there we go. So Cetus is a constellation, it's the biggest constellation you've never heard of. Because I had never heard of it until I got into some of the stories about Cassiopeia and all of that, which was the same mythological stories we heard if you were at the last meeting. So we're going to review a little bit of that. But it's the largest constellation, covering about 3% of the night sky. And it's not noticed that much because it's actually doesn't really have very many dark, bright stars in it. And we'll see that a little later on. It's best observed between the latitudes of +70 and -90. So it's actually more prominent in the southern hemisphere. And if you go on the Astronomical League's program for identifying constellations, it's actually listed in the southern hemisphere constellations. But it is visible in the sky now, as I'll show you at the end. Okay, so in this hemisphere, it's seen mostly in the autumn, and it comes up like in September, and then it'll be up through December. And then it lies across the equator, and it helps us find our way across the celestial sea. So a lot of the constellations that are around it have to do with the aquatic constellations like Aquarius and Pisces and Eridanus, which is the river. Okay? So here's one view of what it looks like. And you can see that this is Menkar. We'll talk about the stars later, but it has one square kind of up here, and then it has another larger area down here, and then they're connected right here. And then Myra, which is a notable star, is like right in the middle some of the time, but you'll see. Okay, next. And this is my favorite drawing of the monster Cetus. So you can see the head up here and the body here. I took this off of my sky guide, which you can hold up in the sky and actually see it. And when I took it, Uranus was visible right here. And that's not always the case. But what this does show is that the stars here are pretty close to the ecliptic, which had something to do in the naming of the star. Okay, so next. And this picture is kind of a not so good one that I got out of a library book. But I included it here because it's the only one I've seen where it actually depicted Cetus as a whale. So and it has this part up here. Instead of this being the head, it's the tail, and then the bright star is the eye. So it's just a little different one. Okay, next. So now we'll get into the Greek mythology about Cetus. So it's this was one of Ptolemy's 48 original constellations in the Almagest. So it was been recognized for a long time as a constellation. And you know when Almagest was written was back in the 2nd century, so it's been around a while. So there are several other characters in Greek mythology that are well known to us who know these stories: Cassiopeia, Cepheus, Andromeda, Perseus, and Pegasus, and then a few others who didn't manage to get their names on a constellation. Okay? So King Cepheus of Ethiopia wanted the best for his people, but he was married to Cassiopeia, who was very vain, and so she became kind of a problem. And so the queen boasted that she was the fairest of them all, and was fairer even than the Nereids, who were the sea nymphs, and they were the daughters of Neptune. And then when she said this, Poseidon, the sea god, became very angry. And then I put, or was it Neptune? Because some of the versions of the story say it was Neptune who was really angry and sent Cetus. Okay, so
if it was Greek, it would have been Poseidon.
It was Poseidon. Okay. Okay, so we have a
Neptune is Roman.
Yeah.
Okay, Neptune is right. Okay, next. Okay, so Poseidon sent the sea monster Cetus to terrorize Cepheus's land. And so Cepheus went to the oracle and he said, well, what can I do to keep this sea monster from terrorizing us? And he said, well, you have to sacrifice your daughter Andromeda. And so he dutifully went down and changed his daughter to the rocks by the sea to await her fate. Now it says that he was the king of Ethiopia, and we know Ethiopia now as a kingdom, a landlocked kingdom in the Horn of Africa, and it's like, well, how could there be a sea monster there? But this was actually a mythical kingdom up around the Levant area. And so the place where he chained her to the rocks was actually at Joppa, which is near modern day Tel Aviv. So it was there up in the Mediterranean area where the mythical Ethiopia was. Okay.
Also note is that Cepheus is also the namesake of Cepheid variable stars, which are a critical piece for determining astronomical distances in modern
Oh,
astronomy.
okay. So he's really his king stuff then. Okay. So now we're going to bring in Perseus, and we're going to hear more about Perseus next month, I guess. But he was the son of Zeus and Danae, the daughter of a king, and this king Acrisius had learned from the oracle that his daughter, his daughter's son was going to kill him. His grandson would kill him, and so he had no interest in having her get married to. Get married, and so he didn't want her to get pregnant, so he locked her in a golden box. But she managed to get impregnated from above. There was something about gold coming down or something. She got impregnated, and then Perseus was born, and so he didn't want anything to do with them. So he stuck them on a box and pushed them out in the ocean, and they were rescued by a fisherman whose brother was Polydectes, the king of the island. So when Perseus was grown up, Polydectes comes to him and says, "Guess what? I'm going to marry your mom." And he says, "No way." And so Perseus wasn't pleased. So he wanted to get rid of Polydectes wanted to get rid of Perseus. So he had this banquet where he set Perseus up so that he wouldn't be able to meet his demands. And so he wanted everybody to bring a horse as a gift. But Perseus knew he didn't have that, so he asked, "Well, what gift could I bring?" And Polydectes says, "Well, bring the head of the Gorgon Medusa," and because he knew that would be impossible for him to do. But Perseus went to some of his friends out there in mythological land, and he got some winged sandals from Mercury, and he got a shiny shield and sword from Minerva, and he went off with this sword and shield, and with the shiny shield, it's hard to say this, shiny shield, he was able to just view the reflection of Medusa, which didn't turn him to stone the way her real visage would, and he was able to kill her. And so he succeeded in killing Medusa and to satisfy Polydectes, and then he carried Medusa's head in a bag, which he used as a weapon. And if you look up in the constellation of Perseus now, there's a bright star Algol, which represents the head of Medusa. And it actually, from the word Algol is where we get our word ghoul. So that's a little bit of linguistics in there. And so as Perseus was returning from slaying Medusa, he comes across the desperate Andromeda, who was crying being chained to the rocks. And so, and right then, she explained to him about her mom's vanity and all that. So and all the trouble she was in. And so then, right then, Cetus comes up out of the sea. He's going to devour her. And just then, her parents happen to be going by. And so, I know you love mythology. And so her parents went and says, "Can they have her hand in marriage if I can save her life and kill the sea monster?" And of course, they said sure. And so he even though she was already engaged or betrothed to somebody else, but that's another story, and which has to do with Medusa too. So then he destroyed Cetus and took Andromeda as his wife. And then one of the poems I read in that same book where I got the funny whale picture, he wrote a letter back to Polydectes and said, "Ha ha, I'm getting married and you're not." So there are some variations in this story. One of them said Perseus killed Cetus by displaying the head of Medusa and turned Cetus to stone, and the other one said that he killed him by slaying her with the same sword that he used to kill Medusa. And then the other thing was that Perseus retreated either on the winged sandals that he got from Mercury, or he and Andromeda took off on Pegasus, the winged horse. And remember, we said that he didn't have a horse. Remember, Perseus didn't have a horse. But what happened was when he killed Medusa and her blood mingled with the water in the sea, that Pegasus sprung out of that magical concoction there. So he had the horse, so he took off. So, in the resolution of the story, Cetus is killed, Perseus and Andromeda lived happily ever after, and they had 7 sons and 2 daughters. And Cassiopeia is punished for her vanity by being forced to hang in the sky, circling the polar star, sometimes upside down, forever and ever and ever. And you can see her when you look up in the sky. So,
You constellationists actually ends somewhat decently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Instead
right.
of being some horrible tragedy or
Yeah.
some crazy thing because of Zeus.
Okay, well, as we learned at the last meeting, anything involved with Zeus is trouble, right? So Greek mythology is not the only mythology. There's also Chinese story, and because the constellation comes up in the fall sky in the northern hemisphere, including in China, they saw it. They associated it with harvest. And so they saw the two areas, those two ground areas in Cetus, they saw as granaries. So there's a granary up at the top and the larger one at the bottom, and then they had other stars that represented animal feed or herbs, and there was even a pigsty there. And then the brightest star was the overseer of the whole farm there. So that's how they saw it. So now we're going to take a look at the stars in Cetus.
You know, I'd hate to be a Greek student and have to remember this on a test.
Well, it would be hard because there's always so many different versions of it. Okay, so we have Alpha Cetus, and the constellation Cetus appears to move backwards from east to west in the sky. So like the tail comes up first and the head comes up last, and so the brightest star, Beta Cetus, rises before Alpha Cetus. And usually in a constellation, it's Alpha star is the brightest star, but that's not the case in Cetus. So because Alpha Cetus is in the head of the sea monster, they are given the Alpha designation because of its position, and it's also because it could also be because it's so close to the ecliptic that they named it the Alpha star. And then the star is also known as Menkar from the Arabic, meaning nose or nostrils, but it's actually a misnomer because it's actually in the jaw of the beast. Okay. So it can appear as a double star when you see it through the telescope, but the two stars, it's actually not a double star. There's actually two stars that are light years apart. And it's also an irregular variable star. So, see, and here's where it is over here. Up here, see, it's right here. So, and this is the whole head of the monster here and the body down here. And it's 220 light years away, and it's an M spectral star. So it's it's a star that's in the last stages of its life. Okay? And then we have Beta Cetus is the brightest star in Cetus, in spite of its beta designation, as we said. And the Arabic is Deneb Kaitos, which casts it as the southern tail. So it's the southernmost star in the tail. And another name is Difta, and that's the second frog, to distinguish it from the first frog, Fomalhaut, and it's of the constellation Pisces Astrinus, and we'll see that in the very last slide I have. Fomalhaut is the first, is not part of Cetus, but it's the first frog. Okay, so and this is way down here. So see, this is the part that these two stars rise first in the constellation, and then these rise last. So so there's the brightest star, Beta, and it's 96 light years away, and it's a K spectrum type. So it's not quite as old as.
It's actually a smaller spectral class than the sun. So
Yeah.
the sun is a main sequence G class, K is
Yeah.
size down.
Yeah.
So it's actually closer to a red dwarf than it is to a star.
Okay. So the most interesting, and this is kind of the paradox about Cetus, is that the most interesting star in the constellation is one that most of the time you can't see. And if you were to look at the constellation right now, you would be able to see it. And I'll explain that. But it's known as Myra, or the wonderful variable star. And it was discovered, or first identified, by David Fabricius in 1596. And after it was identified and recognized as a variable star, and one that, see, at first they thought it was a nova, because he found it and then it went away, so they thought it was a nova. And then, but then it came back. So it's like, oh my. So then they decided it was a variable star, and then after that they called all the other variable stars that they discovered Myra type stars, and there's over 6,000 of them recognized as Myra type. And it has a period of 332 days, and it varies from a second magnitude star to a ninth magnitude star. So when it's bright, you can see it with the naked eye. But if it's at its minimum, you can't see it, except probably with a telescope. So it's a cool Class M star, and it's approaching its last stages of life, and it's got all this fusion of hydrogen, helium, carbon, and oxygen going on, so that makes it pulsate. And so Ptolemy did not include this in the Almagest. Remember, he had the constellation in the Almagest, but he didn't include this star because when he was out there documenting Cetus, he couldn't see it, which is true most of the time. So he didn't include it. So this is kind of a fuzzy little map here of the variation in Cetus, and it's actually goes about every 11 months from the maximum down to the minimum. The next maximum is going to be on this year on November 26th, so right around Thanksgiving. We should be able to see it. And it tends to be able to become visible about a month and a half before the maximum. So sometime in early October, we should be able to see it. And then for a couple of months after, you can see it. Okay? And this is where it is, right kind of in the middle of the constellation, right in the middle of the neck here of the constellation. So it's 418 light years away, and you can see the variation on the magnitude there. And its period is 332 days, so it's like 11 months. Okay? And then we have Eta Cetus, which is called Deneb al-Janubi, which means the tail of the sea monster. And it's also called Awul al-Namat, meaning the first ostrich in a group of hen ostriches. And so it's a K-type orange giant star, which means it's used up its core supply of hydrogen and will become a red giant. So you can check me on that. He's frowning over there.
My alphabet's just green right now.
Oh, okay. All right. And remember the barnyard scene in the Chinese mythology with the hens, and so like here, right, this is the barnyard right here. So and this is Eta Cetus, and it's 118 light years away, and is magnitude 3.46. Okay. And then we have Gamma Cetus, and this one is an apparent triple star system, and has an A-type star with a magnitude 3.6, and then a secondary F-type star, which is dimmer. And you can see these with even with a smaller telescope. If you just look at them with your naked eye, if you can see it, it's pretty dim, but it'll just be seen as a star. But if you look at it through a smaller telescope, then you can actually see the two stars. And it's still in its early stages of hydrogen fusion. It's a A-type star. So most of the stars in Cetus are M and K type stars, but this one is a younger one. And it's up here in the head next to Menkar, right there in the neck and the head. And it's 82 light years away, and is a triple star system right there. Okay. And then we have Tau Cetus, and this one's another really interesting one. It's the closest to the Earth of all of the stars. It's only 12 light years away. So it's like maybe we could actually get there in a lifetime if we had a really fast spaceship, really, really fast. And 78% of the sun's mass. But what's really interesting is that it has evidence of 5 planets, and 2 of them are within a habitable zone. So that, and it's only 12 light years away, so it's like, gee, maybe there's a possibility here. So it's become a target for the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI, and it's even mentioned in some science fiction books. And it was chosen for a SETI experiment called Project Ozma in 1960, but they weren't successful in finding any communication there, which isn't to say that there couldn't be any life there. There just wasn't anything communicating. So that's kind of interesting. And it's right here. So like here's the brightest star. It's right next over in the other part of the belly there. And it's only 12 light years away. And it's a G-type star just like our sun. It's similar, it's kind of similar to our sun. All right, and then we have Iota Cetus, and this was also called Deneb Kaito Shimali from the Arabic, meaning the northern tail of the sea monster, and it's a suspected variable star and another K-type star. Okay, and it's the one that's up here in the tail. So actually, usually when Cetus is rising, this is the first one you'll see. First this one and then this one. And it's 290 light years away, and has a magnitude of 3.56. Okay. And then we have Theta Cetus. So this is another one that was named after some of the ostriches or the hens in the barnyard. So it's called Tani al Namat, which means the second ostrich, and so the Chinese considered it to be part of the Barnyard Sea, and it's another K-type giant star. So it no longer has any hydrogen at its core, but it's using helium for energy, right, Connor?
I have class was what I was thinking of.
Oh, okay.
I apologize for confusing people.
Okay, all right. So.
You would be correct.
Okay, so yeah, I was thinking of O, be a good boy, kiss me, and K and M are all at the end. So most of these stars are cooler stars.
Yeah.
Okay, so is this as it is K type. So this Theta is up here. So Theta and Eta are kind of close to each other and kind of the same distance. So this is 114 light years away and 3.6 on the magnitude. Okay. And then we have Zeta Cetus, and this one has been called Baten Kaitos from the Arabic meaning sea monster's belly. So we're back to the Greek mythology here. And this links the head to the body, and it's an orange K-class star. And also, just like the last one, now fusing helium into carbon, no longer has any hydrogen left. Okay, and Zeta is like right here that joins, so here's the net coming down, and here's the body, and so it's like right here. And there's another one right next to it, you know, which it looks like it's right next to it, but of course, probably light years away. 259 light years, okay? And then this last one, 94 Cetus it's not nearly as bright. I was using like I was going down the list of the brightest stars that I was including in this list, and this one wasn't on there are a lot of brighter ones than this one, but I included this because it has a gas giant planet. It's a triple star with a gas giant planet, and it's also pretty close. It's only 73 light years away, and it has a debris disk. So it looks which is like planetary systems could be developing there, and it's also an F dwarf star, and it's rich in metals such as iron. And then its planet has twice the mass of Jupiter, and an orbit of 1.3 AU. So it takes 454 days to orbit its star. So the planet the planet's a lot more like Jupiter than like Earth, but the orbit is a lot more like Earth's. Okay, and it's kind of out here in so like here's the main body of Cetus, and it's kind of over here. It's only 73 light years away. So it's interesting that the two closest stars, so Tau is 12 light years away, and 94 is 73 light years away. Those are the closest ones are the ones with the planets. So it's kind of like people can get really interested in this if you like aliens and space travel, right? Okay, and there's one deep sky object in Cetus, and it's called M77. It's a spiral galaxy, and we see it face on if we can see it. It's 60 million light years away, so it's not that visible, and its spectral line suggests that it has a massive center such as a black hole. Now this star right here and these down here are not part of that. They're actually stars in the Milky Way that are just in the way of the view of the thing. So, and this is where M77 is. There's a little red dot there, actually. Okay. So this was something I was working on today, and I don't know how you can see how visible it is, but I was trying to make Cetus in 3D. So the ones, the largest, the ones that are closest is the largest one. So, and Vince made a calculation for me using a logarithmic equation to figure out the size. So delta right here is the smallest one. And it's kind of interesting that some of these that are closer, like these up here, Mu and Chi 2 Cetus, those up there, those weren't even included in the list that I had of the brightest stars, but they're closer. They're just not brightest ones. So this is by far the closest one, 12 light years away. So it's the biggest one, and then the next one is this one. These are the two with planets, and then there's a bunch of other ones. So that's the brightest star, but you can see it's not as it's not as close as some of the other ones. Okay, and then this is the last picture. This is a picture that I took using stellarium, And you can see here, I was out 3 nights ago on the 10th at 1:30 in the morning. And I got up and I thought, God, I'm gonna go out and take a picture of Cetus while I can. And I got out there, and the only star I could see was this one, which is Beta, the Beta star. And see, this is the head kind of up here, and then the body is down here. It's not that visible here. I could see it better when I had it in real life on the screen. But it just shows you what a dim constellation it is. It really, you know, I went out to see it, and then you can see that Orion is right here. And the previous night I had been up like an hour and a half later, and Orion was up there in the sky, and it was just brilliant, you know, just shining like crazy. And I could see it really well, but I couldn't see Cetus. All I could see was that one star. This is Fomalhaut down here, the one that was the first frog, and this is the second frog. Remember that? So that's where it is, and that's my last slide. And
All right.
and anybody have any questions? Yes, Gus.
Just a comment, again, Cetus is one of those you've never heard about. But since it was associated with Cassiopeia and Andromeda,
Yeah.
I was expecting it to be over in the northern hemisphere. So that kind of,
Yeah,
it's
well,
actually in the southern.
Well,
isn't it?
it actually stretches across the equator, so and it's only seen in the northern hemisphere about a third of the year. You can see it. If we wanted to see it right now, if we were to go outside right now, it would just be probably barely coming up. It's in December. You can see it right up here at around 8 o'clock.
So
I
it
was
is a,
expecting it to be
Yeah.
up here on the north side.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fall constellation, and
Yeah.
all the others, Andromeda, Perseus,
Yeah.
Yeah.
are all fall so they're all, they sort of, the whole story is,
Yeah.
takes us from the North Pole south.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Good job. Good job.